everybody, welcome. I'm Dr. Nicole Lindsay. I am here at Back and Balance, your Asheville chiropractor, and I have a special guest today with me. I have Daniel Maresca. Is that how you say your name?
Maresca, yeah. Or
Maresca.
You can call me Danny. Yeah.
Danny, okay. Danny is a clinical hypnotherapist, among other things. I'm going to read his bio here. We are talking about breaking the cycle of stress, by the way, and of course, we're going to be talking about self-techniques that you can possibly start using now to help you. Also, just why it's so important to do that, overall health, how you can express your full potential if you learn how to strategize and use these techniques, whether it's with a hypnotherapist, by yourself, all together. We're going to be diving deep into that. My guest here has supported his clients in health and well-being for 18 years using holistic and functional approach. During that time, he worked with clients using corrective and rehab exercises and functional nutrition and lifestyle coaching. So he's right up our alley with what we do. This is why we're very excited to have him here. Over his career, he's come to recognize that all of the core that at the core of his clients' complaints has been negative emotions and beliefs. I'm sure you can relate to that, right? He subsequently is trained at the top hypnotherapy school in the country, the Institute of Interpersonal Hypnotherapy, which included over 500 hours of training, including parts work, eye movement therapy, clinical hypnosis for pain and regression, to name a few of the techniques he uses. In addition, he has trained in a 100-hour modality called holographic memory resolution, using the frequency of color to holographically replace the unmet childhood and adult needs of his clients. He is practicing full-time as a clinical hypnotherapist here in Asheville, but he does do online work as well, focused on underlying beliefs and early life relationships using various therapeutic modalities and techniques within his hypnotherapy practice to help his clients come to a greater recognition of their innate wholeness. So welcome. Thank you for being here.
Thanks for reading the long intro.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. You've got a lot to offer, and I know this is a topic that many people probably thought about at some point undergoing hypnosis, but are scared. They don't know enough about it. So hopefully we can shed some light on that.
Yeah, absolutely. There certainly are we call myths and misconceptions when it comes to hypnosis, hypnotherapy. I think recently there was on Netflix, there's some, I haven't even watched it, but something called The Hypnotist, some show, and of course there's these ideas that come about as far as what hypnosis is, and then hypnotherapy kind of takes it further. But I think it's important initially to just explain what it isn't more than anything, because the idea that I have some power over someone is totally a myth. It's really an agreement between the client and myself, or whoever the hypnotherapist may be. So a person is in that state of hypnosis, is fully conscious, fully aware, and really it's a natural state that we're all in. If you think about it, you drive down the car. Does this happen to you where you're driving and then all of a sudden you realize it's been like 3 miles and you're like, was I driving for the last 3 miles?
It's frightening.
Yeah. And so what that is that's just your mind sort of, the automatic parts are working and your car is being driven mostly safely, but that aspect of you is really focused on whatever you're thinking about. And so in that sense, you are in a hypnotic state. You're in this altered state of focus. And because hypnosis is really where the conscious mind, the part of our mind that we're all familiar with, is really in this narrowed focus. We relax the body, we relax the mind from all the thoughts and really focus it on my voice or some imagery that I might suggest, and so that we can get to the subconscious mind. So you're in complete control when you're in this state. In fact, when I work with clients, I make sure they know, like, you have control, you can stop anytime you want. We're working together to get you where you want to go. So I think it's important that people realize it's not, and you're not sleeping, right? Because you're that aspect of you is conscious in a way. Right. It's just you're really relaxed.
Yeah.
And you're then more able, more responsive to those suggestions to start changing your beliefs and changing the way you view things.
So far it's not you're not out of control, or you have control and you're not asleep. So those are two myths that we just squash there about hypnosis. Let's talk about, I know when we talked about doing this, one of the things that you mentioned is you like to help people, like empower them to express their full potential. And let's talk about that. Let's talk about what that means, because as a chiropractor, this is really important to us. And that's the whole major premise behind chiropractic. And a lot of people don't realize that. They think that it's just about your back pain. And let's just go to the chiropractor when you have back pain or neck pain. But really, down to the core, the philosophy of chiropractic and what we're doing is helping each person express their full potential by removing any interferences in their body, whether it be structural, and a lot of chiropractors like myself, we incorporate thinking and nutrition and exercise and all these other outside influences that can affect and cause interferences and then negate this expression. So let's talk about that a little bit. What does that mean, and why is that important to be able to express?
Yeah, I think the parallel there, as far as chiropractic philosophy and my philosophy with this work, is your body is designed to be healthy. I know that's sort of inherent in the model for chiropractic. There are things that get in the way, like your posture and habits and things like that, and maybe an accident or something like that changes the structure. But the body is designed to heal itself. It just needs the guidance and assistance sometimes to be able to do that. And so for me, in a very similar sort of philosophical level, I believe that, and this is really more a spiritual level, I believe that we're already whole and complete human beings. We have just forgotten that. And so the mind gets in the way of us remembering and understanding that. And so in the work that I do, I work to help people remember their wholeness. So we work with those inner parts. But that parallel is there in that, absolutely, you're designed to be healthy and to be this full expression of who you are as this human being.
And that full expression, you may be in your 40s or 50s and still have never experienced full expression, which is really sad, right? Because we think, okay, half my life is over and it's only downhill from here. These are the things that we've been told or we tell ourselves, right? And therefore, I'm tired, I'm getting old, this is how I'm going to feel from now on. When in reality, no, that's not necessarily true. You may have so many interferences between toxins and, just unhealthy body, physically and mentally, that your body has not even had the opportunity to express what it's capable of. Yeah. And you don't even know that.
Yeah, and importantly, it's still a possibility in later years.
Yes.
And so, for example, I had a client who was in her 70s, and she had these panic attacks. It would happen, different situations, maybe driving or maybe social situations. And this is something she had for decades, and had medication if needed to be taken. And you can imagine, for anybody, like if you have experienced even just a little bit of anxiousness, but imagine like that state of panic, how much that can feel like it's limiting and constricting you from that full expression. But in 2 sessions, it was gone, and she had a new lease on life, so to speak. And it's really a function of the mind and those limitations that we place on ourselves. So that possibilities for health through chiropractic care, nutrition, and so on, and then working with the mind, it's so
exponential.
Yeah, I mean, there's so much potential.
Benefits.
No matter what your age is, no matter what your current situation is, right? There is no limit to the possibility, honestly. Yeah. Right? I mean, people heal themselves of disease conditions. Yeah. They do. That's a fact. And so why would you limit yourself with your own thoughts and beliefs about your reality, those around you, and your potential, when you can see other people have done it, right? So that potential is there for anyone regardless. Yeah. Yeah.
And we always think about, only incorporating things like this, hypnosis, chiropractic, better nutrition, when there's a problem, right? When our digestion is a total mess and now we have to cut out certain foods and do a cleanse and really figure out what we should be eating. Why do we wait till we get to that point where we're sick or unwell before we actually do something about it. You know, same with this. You know, do we need to be stressed to the point of I can't leave my house because I am in such a state of overwhelm that now let's try hypnosis, right? It's like,
yeah, why does
this
it take
can
that
be right
straw to break the camel's back for
Yeah.
you to like be aware? Yeah.
So this can be, and we'll talk about what hypnosis can be used for and helpful for, but do know that if you're healthy, you can even be healthier. You can express even more potential. So you don't need to do these things only if you're unwell or unhealthy. You can be healthy and get healthier. You can get more creative. You can really tap into parts of your body and your brain that you never knew existed if you're healthy already and you do something like this.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, and you posed an interesting question, which is why do we do that? Why do we wait until that happens? And that actually is inherent in the work that I do. There is an aspect of you, you know, it varies from person to person, the why, but there is what we call an inner part that is maybe it is, you know, saying don't go, you know, you have pain or something like that, right? Which is a signal from your body that something's wrong. But maybe there's a person that just ignores it, right? There's an inner part of them in their mind that has these certain beliefs and emotions that then is saying, you know, I'm not going to do anything yet until, you know, I don't want to. What would happen if I went and did this? What else could it be? How much worse could it get? Whatever the thoughts are that run around from this inner part that might limit you from taking that next step. So there's all these. And it plays into just, here we are in February, it plays into this, the New Year's resolutions, and like we have these inner parts that stop us from taking action.
Yeah.
And I think, you know, when it comes to behaviors and taking action towards towards fullness of health, there's always these inner parts that we can resolve, and we actually can start to bring those parts into ourselves. And in working with the deep inner mind. But I think it's interesting that, you know, just to consider that it's not your fault if you aren't taking action. Don't beat yourself up because it's not really you. I had written a blog post about this the myth of self-sabotage, and the word self being the key word there. It's not the greater you that's sabotaging your behaviors or whatever you're doing. It's this inner part of you that's really like a child looking through your eyes, seeing the world. And so, you know, this isn't about blame when a person is not, you know, doing the maintenance things, taking care of themselves, going to regular chiropractic care, whatever. It's this inner part. You know?
Yeah, and I think I've read this before, but I was looking at your website and going through some information, and a lot of these limiting beliefs, they enter our brain, our subconscious, at a very early age.
Yeah, let's talk about neurology. Let's talk about that.
Yeah, like what is the age? Was it
7?
7. Yeah. So think about that. You know, what kind of environment did you grow up in as a child, and what was being told to you and said to you by your family? And again, let's not blame. It is what it is, right? That's how we were raised and what it was. But these things then dictate what we do, what we think, how we live for some people our whole lives, and that can become very limiting and toxic and painful in and of itself.
Yeah, so the you know, speak to a chiropractor, the neurology of this, right, before the age of 7, the prefrontal cortex, that's the executive functioning part of your brain, hasn't come online yet. So you're in this state of being a sponge. The brainwave frequencies are like alpha, theta predominantly, and which means you just take in information, truth. Everything that you hear is truth, and then you work through it later. And so when your parents, your classmates, your you know, siblings, whomever are sending you messages about your world around you, about you and who you are and what your potential is, and don't do this and don't do that. It's creating that software. It's stored as this is your operating system moving forward. And for better or worse, and no, it's not blaming those people, because one of the things that when I work with clients is everybody's, you know, doing the best they can with the resources that they have.
Yeah.
And that includes you, and that includes getting to that place to understand that those that influence you also are doing the same thing. But yeah, it's this really foundational sort of influence that you
Let's give an
operate
example of that, for specifically regarding stress. Because if you're listening to this, you're obviously wanting to get help with stress. So what may have you been told in your early years or been exposed to that now puts you in a state of overwhelm all the time when you have a lot going on, or just things that really stress you out? What have you found in clinical practice?
Well, let's narrow it down first to what we mean by stress in this sense, because like, there's emotional stress, there's physical stress, and so on. So we're talking, I think you're talking about really that state of overwhelm, right? Where there's so much going on in your life right now, and you just feel like you're almost in that freeze state of fight or flight, that sympathetic state. And so with that in mind, your question was what again?
An example of what a person...
What influences that?
Yeah.
So it's very circumstance specific. And so the example, let's say, would be... maybe let's come up with a good example of what might be happening for somebody. So let's say they're a stay-at-home mom, and they've got young children under the age of 10, and they're kind of overwhelmed, and they want to they want to do something for themselves and take care of themselves, but they can't because they're constantly feeling this state of overwhelm from all the things that they have to do. Where that comes from is 100% like unique as your fingerprint as far as where it comes from. But when I work with a client, what we do is we look at the context of when those feelings arise. And so one of the ways, and you can do this right now if you want, one of the ways that you can kind of start to connect with your response and then where it actually originated is to check in with your body, right? And so if you bring to mind an issue that's present for you right now that has some level of intensity and creating that sort of stressed, overwhelmed kind of state, close your eyes and just connect within and feel, where do you feel that in your body, below your chin and above your waist. The reason for that is because it's actually linked to those sort of energy centers, if you will. But somewhere in that space, and just connect to what you feel. And you can start to connect with that part of you that is showing up and creating that feeling in your body. So these inner parts that I talked about earlier, they show up in how your body feels, so physical inner sensations, your thoughts, your images, your ideas. And so you can connect with that initially. But when I work with clients, we're trying to then figure out when it's happening. So it's like when I'm picking up my kids from school, let's say it's 3 o'clock, I'm in the line waiting to pick up the kid from school. And then I start to get this feeling in my body, and then my thoughts start going, and so on. So the context in that sense is when you're at school, in the car, picking up your child. And then from there, what are the emotions that are there and present? And you can do this also with yourself. When you feel that state coming on, close your eyes, and when I think about whatever it may be, this particular situation, when I think about having my kids home and having to do all those things, I feel so. And then what emotion, right? I feel so scared, I feel so stressed, whatever. And just kind of, you can use that as a bridge to then find out what the beliefs are. So in practice, that's what I do. We'll figure out what the situation is, what the emotions are, and then underneath those emotions is a belief, which started when, way back when.
6 or 7.
And so then that gives us the sort of frequency to ping that backstory. So the tuning fork idea, right? So way back when you were a child, there's this frequency, this tuning fork, bing, and it has a certain frequency. It's these emotions and things that happen when dad screamed at you or whatever. And then later on in life, when certain situations feel similar enough, this thing starts to vibrate. Present moment here vibrates and it resonates because it's like, oh, this is just like that, and this starts vibrating. And then you have those same physical sensations and so on. So it's all sort of, you can kind of just see how that connects to the past and that sort of upbringing. But this was an inner part that started when you were a child, and then we work with that in hypnotherapy to resolve that. And we can talk more about that later. But essentially, it's unique to everybody. So whatever the circumstance may be, it's still the same model of here's your outward symptom. Could be physical, could be actual, like a physical symptom like gastrointestinal issues. And then underneath that symptom is an emotion or emotions. Underneath that is beliefs. Underneath that is an initial sensitizing event. Could be something small, just dad yelled at me. And then within that is initial sensitizing relationships. And so we work all the way back there. So is that?
Yeah. Would you say that the majority of all of your patients that are dealing with stress in this sense, does it always follow this pattern? There's always, okay.
Yeah.
So there's kind of a beginning, a beginning point, and the job in order to heal from that or break this cycle, which is what this is all about, is tracing that back to the very beginning.
Yeah, and
trying to at least.
And so if you think of it this way, most of us think that we're viewing the world, the people in our lives, and the situations, circumstances that we're in, we think we're viewing it as our adult self. We really do. We think we're this grown up that's, here and make these decisions, but really looking through your eyes in most situations, especially I feel like in this world right now, there's a lot of like people that are still operating from those unresolved sort of child perspectives. And we have our inner critic, we have our inner child, and there's the battle therein. That is how we view the world. So I think, we all are in that sort of place, myself included, where we're operating from that way of a child looking through our eyes, right?
Yeah, it's insane how we have so much stress on us in this country specifically, but just in general in life, it is overwhelming. And I myself, personally, I don't suffer with anxiety. I feel for the people that do. I've seen it. But during COVID, when that 2020, that year, when that first hit, and as a business owner responsible for employees and patients and my family, and it was, I have to say that I felt anxious. I had anxiety. I never had panic attacks until that time because I just didn't know what to do. So let's talk about what's happening in the brain and how when you're overwhelmed, when you're experiencing stress like this, and then maybe bring in hypnotherapy and how that on a physiological level, psychological level can break that cycle.
So certainly like the circumstances of those 2 to 3 years was extreme, and it really is just massive compression of like you're being forced to like you're down to your survival needs, right? Maslow's hierarchy. You're at that like I need safety, food, shelter. Those things are your primary desires at that stage when you're so stressed out from a global perspective. And so the from the brain standpoint, as we're shifted out of that prefrontal cortex, that like I can make rational decisions side of the brain, back to the lower centers of the brain, the reptilian brain, your amygdala, which is your emotional centers, and you're just focused on survival. And so that state drives you into that sort of fight or flight or freeze state, whatever, it's all, everybody kind of probably experienced the whole mix of those, right? Like I want to curl up in a ball and not move, or I want to fight somebody about what's going on. And so, and
that's where all the symptoms of stress come about.
Yeah, the physiological, right? Physical expressions of the stress. Yeah.
So that would be like heart racing, insomnia.
High blood pressure. Yeah, you've got
sweating. Digestion issues.
Exactly. Yeah.
So that's.
Yeah, so then it shows up in your physiology, and you have like the little bitty symptoms, and then if it's not addressed, right, it turns into conditions and full-blown diseases, right? The body's speaking to you. So we get into those sort of deeper centers of the brain, the amygdala, reptilian brain, which if you think of like a reptile, it's just right. It's visceral, needs. It's just basic. Primitive kind of needs. And so with with hypnotherapy, one of the modalities you mentioned that I utilize within the work is called holographic memory resolution. It's a really, I won't get into the specifics of it, but basically it's similar to what I've already explained with hypnotherapy. We're going back and we're sort of reframing what happened in the past, and we're meeting an unmet need, and then kind of changing things in the deep inner mind. We're not changing the past, we can't change what happened, but we can change how you hold on to what happened and how you respond to what happened. And with that particular technique, they've done some research using QEEG scans, quantitative electroencephalograms, and the person comes in, they've got whatever the issue may be, let's call it stress or overwhelm, and then you can see the areas of the brain that are sort of lit up from just that way of functioning in the brain, those firings, those patterns. But then after a session, we see a shift in the brain. And this, you'll see research, related to meditation showing the same kind of thing. Like if regular meditators, the parts of their brain that are more active is different than somebody that doesn't meditate and is sort of in that chronic stress state. And so there's real, true physiological, neurological shifting that happens with hypnosis and hypnotherapy. You've got this pattern in your brain where these neurons are firing, and they get in this pattern of firing when the certain circumstance happens. This is when I get stressed and anxious and my body tightens up and I can't breathe. This is that. So that fires every time. And sometimes it starts to generalize even more than that circumstance, right? And it becomes like more often that you experience that. It's really getting efficient at that sort of neurological firing. But when we go in hypnosis and use these tools of hypnotherapy, we're able to start to shift into firing a different way, using your imagination, if you will, to imagine and something happening differently. Just doing that starts to fire things differently. So if you rehearse in your mind that situation where you're picking up your kids and you're feeling stressed out and those sort of tensions are happening in your body, and you sit for 5 minutes even, earlier before that, and you rehearse it in your mind a different way, you're changing the way that fires. And the more frequently you do that, the more you're basically interrupting that pattern, and you're going to change the neurology. And in effect, what we're doing in hypnosis and hypnotherapy is we are starting to create a new firing in the brain, a new way of responding in a certain situation. And we're using these tools to do that with the deep inner mind.
So neurology. So basically,
yeah, just bridging that. It's real. It's not just some floofy thing.
Yeah.
It's there are real changes in your brain that happen.
Yeah. And then do you give? Is it done? You're now able to use those new neurological tracks automatically, kind of like operant conditioning, or do you have to practice certain exercises ongoing to keep stimulating those new tracks?
Good question. Yeah, I think it depends on a situation, but when we work on such a deep level of those beliefs, like the operating system, it's easier to make that shift. It is helpful then to subsequently follow it up on your own. We'll do like anchoring and trigger to kind of connect to that state that we reach in hypnosis. So neurolinguistic programming, basically, I'll help you get into a state, or you can get yourself into that state of feeling better. Then you can anchor that in. You can like thumb to middle finger, breathe in, and then say a word or something that connects you to that. So you sort of bridged yourself to the experience in hypnosis that you can then carry on later. And you're picking up the kids and you go, boom, take a breath in, say your trigger phrase, and you can remind the body, because again, that's just the brain saying, oh yeah, this is what I feel when this happens.
Right.
So you can reinforce it. Also with clients, I'll do, in some cases, audio to listen to. That's just what we call hypnotic programming, where we're focused specifically on what we've discovered and sort of those emotions and beliefs that were foundational, and then the reverse of those that we work through to create the new beliefs and new emotions, and then we use those in that hypnotherapy or hypnosis track, so they can listen to it over and over again. So it does help to do that, to reinforce it.
Yeah, and they might need, just like with anything, maintenance therapy sessions, hypnotherapy sessions.
Yeah, I mean, for the most part, it should stick with, so I'll do, let's say, 3 to 5 sessions on a given issue. and then we've seen good shift in things. And certainly they can come back if there are maybe some circumstances or something that we missed or something like that. That's not often the case, but if down the road you feel like you need to do that, you can. I do my best to also give clients tools to use on their own. So maybe a little different. Hopefully there's less of the long-term maintenance, basically. Yeah. If we go back to the spiritual or philosophical perspective here, that we're moving you towards wholeness, like a shaman does soul retrieval and pulls that back for you. I don't know a whole lot about that, but basically that same idea. We're going back and we're pulling these pieces and bringing them into that wholeness. And when you, on that deep level of your beliefs, recognize that you're whole, and you feel what that feels like in your physical body, and you know that with your thoughts, then it stays with you. So that's my goal. Certainly sometimes it's helpful for people to come back and do like a sort of follow-up.
Yeah. So what would a therapy session look like for someone that's never been hypnotized? Yeah,
so normally I start with clients just to connect with them and understand. So like a consultation where we're just kind of talking. So I can understand what it is, where they are and where they want to be, and then we can kind of work through later what's in the way. It's usually those parts in the backstory. But and so once I get that information from them and we kind of get to know each other a little bit, in the first session, I'm pulling out those emotions and then the beliefs around this issue. I'm helping them to figure out the context, if there is a context. Sometimes there's not. Sometimes it's a broader, like, I always feel this way. And so that's, then we would typically just do a regression to childhood for that. But so pulling out those emotions, the beliefs, depending on what route we're going to go. And then from there, just going into that state. So that looks like, usually before a first session, I'll have them listen to a recording of me just to kind of get used to it. So it goes pretty easy in the process in session. But there's just various ways that I guide them with my voice and giving them instructions to just, relax their body and their mind. And once we get to that state, which is, we'll call it a medium trance state. It's not like totally out, like if you see like some of the past life regression kind of stuff where people are like zonked. You're conscious because you're going to be participating. It's a back and forth kind of process. So they get into that hypnotic state, and then depending on what tools I might be using, we're going to, there's sort of a dialogue really between, I'm guiding the person, and they may be talking, it sounds kind of funny, but it's kind of like you got the one on this shoulder and one on this shoulder talking back and forth. So you are, as your wisest, highest self, talking to this little part of you and trying to understand why this part, and then I'll guide you to talk back and forth really. And as silly as it sounds, once you get into the flow of it, which doesn't take just a minute or two, it's really therapeutic to really explore those, just almost map out your inner psyche in that way. And even just in doing that, there's a lot of shifting that happens for people. So and then we're working to gain an understanding of what happened, if anything, in particular, or where what the perspective is of this inner part, and get it on board with where you want to be, which is you want to be calm and relaxed in situations, feel peace in your body and mind, and then we just use different tools to kind of bring that forward into the present moment. So and there's lots of different, one session, that may be how one session goes, another one I might use other tools, just kind of depends.
Different for each person.
Mm-hmm.
So we know that just from this conversation that hypnosis is great for overwhelm and stress.
Mm-hmm.
What other things, what other symptoms, what other health problems, concerns, habits would you say hypnosis is great for, that you've had success?
The easy question, the easy answer is like pretty much anything that has emotions associated with it is something that hypnosis can work for. So if you have like some stomach issues, let's say, which we talked about how the physiology is going to be an expression of that stress state, but if you have stomach issues, obviously we can shift that. Certainly fears, like fear, I've had a lot of clients with fears of cars and planes and things like that.
How about habits with smoking or overeating?
Yeah. Smoking and overeating for sure. With the eating side of it, there's more complexity. Smoking's easy. That's pretty much 4 sessions, and if the person was ready to do it and wants to, it works. Weight control, it's a little bit more complex because there's so much tied into it. Having come from the nutrition field and fitness, I saw a lot of women that were challenged with controlling their weight, and that's one of the things that led me to this. Like, there's so much deeper, because there's plenty of women out there, and men, but that can exercise all they want and still not lose weight, and try to change their diet and still not lose weight, try to do the thyroid whatever and still not lose weight. And so there's some deep work sometimes that has to be done with that. So sometimes weight loss might take more like 10 sessions to dig to those deeper things. But really anything where there's emotions tied to it, certainly behaviors, long-standing emotional patterns, that is really, I think, really powerful. People that have those constant feelings of, we'll use the word anxious feelings, depressed feelings, things like that. It can really shift things pretty significantly. Yeah.
So self-tools, if you could give our listeners and viewers just a little guide. We're going to give you some tools that you can obtain online from Danny as well, and we'll tell you how to get there. But for right now, what tools for people listening that are suffering with overwhelm, stress, they're listening to this and they're like, I gotta get back to work, I'm so stressed out. You told them they can check in with themselves as one thing, but you can probably give them a couple tools that they can start working on right now.
Yeah, absolutely. A couple easy ones you're familiar with vagal nerve, right? So the vagus nerve. So what happens is when you get in that stress state, there's a shift in the communication channel, if you will, of that vagus nerve between where it starts kind of in the gut and up to the brain and everywhere, those primary organs in between. And if you sort of get out of that front part of that vagus nerve and into the back part, you're in that sort of fight or flight state. So we want to shift you into that front part of that vagus nerve, that which is the more social, you're at ease kind of state. And so one quick tool you can use is simply, I'll give you 2. One would just be tapping here with like really solid. So you make your fingers just like this and tap pretty solidly, and that will start to wake up that vagus nerve. Another one is using your eyes. And so simply just shift your eyes. You can do this laying down, but just shift your eyes all the way to the left or right. And you're just going to hold it looking over there. Don't turn your head, just your eyes. And you might have to hold that for 1 or 2 minutes, but at some point you're going to get a parasympathetic shift, and you're going to yawn or have some sort of letdown sort of sense in your body. So those are in situations where especially the eye gazing, that's a situation where you feel like you need kind of immediate kind of shift. Other tools would be, I talk about this in what we'll share with you guys if you want to download some videos that I have. It's just to shift your focus. So when you're in a state, I use this sort of a triangle. You can use a triangle. Sometimes I use a stool as sort of the analogy. So whatever that state of like anxiousness is, it's propped up by these legs of the stool, and that is your focus, your body, what's going on, sensations in your body, and then your thoughts, images, and ideas. And so if you change any of those, you basically effectively take out one of the legs of that stool, and you can break that state. It won't resolve the childhood stuff and those underlying beliefs, but it will break that state. So you can effectively that's simple tools like going outside and looking at trees, right? You're just taking your attention off of the computer or the thoughts in your mind, and just sort of use your eyes, any of your senses, to kind of shift your focus outside of yourself to something else. That toy, it's like a collapsible ball that opens up to a sphere. I was going to bring it, but I forgot. What happens when you're in that state is there's this sort of collapsing that happens. You get so small in yourself. And so if you can open your awareness to outside of this constricted perspective of who you are and just this physical body, it will calm things down. So even just closing your eyes and connecting, feeling what the space around you feels like, not in your body, but what does the space around me in this room feel like? You're expanding that, and you're going to have that sort of shift in your state.
Really, really simple, but important. I mean, there's so many things that we can do to break that cycle immediately. We don't have to, resort or succumb to things that put us in a medicated state. We can become more aware of our surroundings, find other methods, find other strategies to connect ourselves physiologically, emotionally, mentally, to the world around us, to ourselves, and get out of that state. So I love this. I love what you said initially too, how you really just help your clients, first of all, feel where that's coming from when you're in that state. Because so often people are not in tune with their own bodies. They don't realize what's going on. They don't understand this vessel. They've been in it for 40 some years and they have no idea.
In it, relatively speaking, right?
Yeah.
I mean, there's this level for many people of dissociation from the body. So if it's not comfortable to be in my body, I might be next to my body. I might be kind of behind my body. And so a lot of people that have a hard time connecting, they've dissociated at some point in their past. And so yes, using tools to just even chiropractic, to feel, oh wow, I noticed the shift in how my body feels. Doing that more regularly is going to slowly pull you back a little bit into your body, and then of course working on why that happened in the first place. But bringing yourself into your body, and if that is you, the more often you can do that, do whatever it is to bring you back into your physical body. It's like patting yourself, like in Qigong, right? Doing things like that brings you back into your body, and that's really important.
Yes. Great. Thank you for sharing that. So you do have some gifts for everybody today. Will you tell us about them? Yes, a couple things. So number one is I'd love to, if you're interested, I've got a free meditation. I believe it's the guided, it's for safety and grounding. And so it's a guided imagery meditation, just guides you into deep into a forest, and you can create this sort of safe scene in nature for yourself. And I know the feedback I've gotten is that it's very relaxing. Of course, we all need that. So you're welcome to download that. We've got a coupon code for that. And then also I've got a video series that you can sign up for that is called Mindful Emotional Self-Regulation. And it's just 5 short videos. They're just going to kind of ease you into this idea of breaking the state that we just talked about. And in the end, we kind of talk about some of the idea of inner parts. So yeah, perfect. And we'll put the links to these gifts in this thread. Also, we'll send this out as an email, and we'll have links there as well. Your website, how can they reach you through your website? Website is www.danielmarescahypnosis.com. We'll put the link to that. Perfect. So, yes. Yeah. And so if you are listening to this and you want more, or you go into the gifts and you do that and you say, okay, I do want a session with Danny, I encourage you to do that. I'm probably going to do it myself. We can always get better. We can always get healthier and work on ourselves to think more clear, to have less stress, to be healthier. So I think this is a great way to do that. I thank you so much for your time, for being here. I always like to leave our listeners with one thing. One thing's, again, everything, it can be overwhelming. And when you listen to something like this, you have all your to-do list just grew by 4 more things. So we don't want to create overwhelm. We want you to just take one thing that you learned from this, or will give you that one thing to do. What would be the one thing that you want people to do that are listening to this, that are experiencing stress, overwhelm? What's one thing they can do? Instead of something that they can do, something that they can know and remember, and which is to know and remember that you are already perfect, whole, and complete. And so just hold on to that. And everything else is just noise, because you're already perfect, you're already whole, you were made that way. And so just know that. Perfect. I love that. Thank you. Thank you for watching. We really appreciate it. If you need any chiropractic care, please don't hesitate to reach out to us here at Back in Balance. Thanks for listening, everybody.